So I have reached the end of the second part of the Shirdi Sai series, and I would encourage all of you to watch it if you have patience, because it can be quite time consuming and extended, bearing in mind that it's made for television in 45-minute slots that give you about 15 minutes of worthwhile viewing, and the rest is just entertainment that drags on and on. But it was well worth watching or being in the presence of, if only because it kept me so consistently in the presence of Shirdi Sai Baba. And one of the things that happens consistently in the series is that he talks. He gives a discourse to the groups of people who come to his space or follow him around the village. And one of the favorite topics everywhere in the series is people call him insane. You know, they laugh at him. He has a habit, and he laughs when he tells me these stories as well, because he would walk through the village talking to the sky, you know, talking to God, having entire conversations with God, and people would point fingers and laugh at him. The people who didn't know him, and it seems so crazy for us here, or so unheard of, that there would be people in Shirdi who didn't know who he was, who would mistake him for a beggar at the time because he looked like one. So for the people who lived in Shirdi and didn't know that this was Sai Baba, and you know that he had this group of devotees in Shirdi, or who were skeptical about whether or not he was in fact a saint or an avatar or sent by God or had any value from a sacred perspective, those people would laugh at him and they'd point fingers, they'd call him names, and they would accuse him of being insane. Every time he needed to have an in-depth discussion about anything, he would talk to God. And he tells the story about how very often, you know, somebody would stop and say, "Who are you talking to?" And he'd say, "To the master." And they'll say, "Why are you always talking to the master?" And his favorite response of all of the, you know, he always had a variety available, but his favorite response was, "Oh, whenever he has a free moment, he likes to chat with me." And on other occasions, he would say, "Well, you know, he's not getting it right today, so I'm just reminding him." And very often, in the midst of something, he would stop whatever he was doing and he would have this intense prayer-like discussion with God. Or he would stop to compliment God. And his favorite thing in terms of complimenting God is like, "Vah Malik, you know, what an amazing creation you've made in this human being. This human being is so fascinating and so complicated. You know, Vah Malik, what an interesting play you have put on for us as a scriptwriter." So he would refer to God in all of these ways, and he'd have these crazy discussions. Well, they were crazy for everybody else, but he always knew who he was talking to. So I asked him, I said, "Are you ever aware of being a channel?" Because in the modern world, we call it channeling, when you are speaking to God and from God, or a master like yourself. And then he reminds me that firstly, he never considered himself a master. He considered God the master, but not himself. And secondly, whenever something flowed through him, although he didn't have a word, that channeling is, you know, is not a word that he had in his vocabulary for it, he was always aware that the teaching, that the information, that the guidance was coming from beyond him as he exists in the now moment. So if he says, "I am," and he never ever said, they said, whenever somebody asked him his name, he didn't have one. This man so seriously had ownership of nothing that he didn't even own a name, not an identity. So others called him Sai Baba, and if you asked him his name, he would say, "They call me Sai Baba." He didn't have a name, and he didn't have an identity in terms of parents or belonging. So he says he can't then give a name to other things that have not already been named by God. So the information that comes through to the limited being that he sees himself as is firstly from God. It is given in that way. But also he has an awareness of past lives and all of the information that comes from that, and how that impacts on future lives. So he knows from his own past life information that this capacity, this ability to speak about so many different aspects of life and to teach people the right way to live through life itself comes from the knowledge acquired over all of those lifetimes. And he would say to people, God sent me. I mean, the story he tells people is that he had a discussion with God about how messed up the world was and how there was so much sorrow in it and how God needs to go and do something about it. And God said, well, if you're so interested and you're so passionate about this and so compassionate about this, you go. And God sent him to serve a purpose. And he used to say to people, God sent me to address the sadness and the sorrow of the world. God sent me to be everybody's friend. And from there, he launches into a whole mantra of Mere Dost, Mere Zindagi. My friend is my life. So everywhere in his life, he chose to make a friend out of everyone. For somebody who is not a householder, he doesn't own a house, he doesn't have a family, he's never married, he has no children. For him, friendship became the biggest of the human interactions and relationships that he had this lifetime. And his devotees were friends. His disciples were friends. And even when he talks to people who are married, he says you must first be friends with each other. It doesn't matter if it is a stranger. If you make that person a friend, then you are creating a space of experiencing. You are creating a space of learning. The human ego is such that it doesn't like to learn. It doesn't like to admit to being wrong. It doesn't like to admit to being wounded or in pain with strangers. But if we consider that person a friend, then we can share more openly. We can give and we can receive and we can speak more easily. And then he says, but human beings don't know how to be friends. And he had one particular devotee who was the teacher in the village of Shirdi. And as a teacher, he had a particular place of respect, because that's how Indian traditional teaching systems work. This was your guru. You respected him. And he would say to him, we've had 32 lifetimes together, and in all 32 lifetimes you have argued with me every step of the way. But we have been friends in all 32 lifetimes. So key to his relationship or his friendship there was the understanding that that is the nature of the beast. If you are an elephant being friends with a lion, why must your friend now turn into an elephant? If you only wanted to be friends with elephants, why are you making a friend of a lion? And of course, now we live in a society where people are posting so much more information on the internet about cross-species communication and cross-species companionship, right? Friendship, where animals are showing compassion for each other. But in human nature, we find our comfort zones with people who are most like us, people who will agree with us. And we find our discomfort zones in those who are willing to tell us the truth and hold us accountable for ourselves. And it is in our discomfort zones that we find our learning. It is in our discomfort zones that we realize that we are living, that we are not just going through the motions. So when we have those kinds of friendships, and he will laugh, he will say, you have argued your whole life, all your lives. This is who you are. And he will accept that. This is his friend. he will say to his friend, go there. And his friend will say, why must I leave you? I don't have to go there to worship anyone. I'm staying right here with you. And he will say, but you must go there. No, no, I'm not going. I'm staying here with you. Stubborn. Everything else, I am your total devotee. But when you tell me to do something I don't want to do, then I'm not going to do it. This is his friend and his devotee. So he says, when you make a friend out of someone, and they are not just a disciple or a student or a devotee, when you have made them your friend, then you give them more room, more space that is yours, that is you actually, to play. And that's what your friends are for, to play at life. To recognize that whether they are wounding you or creating sorrow for you, or if they are judging you, or if they are against you in some matter, it is still just a space of play. And it is only a space of play in your ego. Because real friendship is a sacred space that makes allowances for the growing that is required. So here where all the playing is happening, the pushing and the shoving and the judging and the assessing and the evaluating and the creating sorrow and creating wounds and creating sadness, that's where we're playing. But really what's created that playground, if you will, is the friendship. The space of knowing that this person is ultimately on your side. That this is somebody you depend on. Somebody whose loyalty you depend on. Somebody you trust even. Somebody you care about. Somebody you have chosen to journey with. And that friendship is not limited to a specific role. Remember, it can be your student and your friend. It can be your husband and your friend. It can be your neighbor and your friend. It can be your colleague and your friend. It can be the cashier at the local supermarket and your friend. And in fact, if we put it in its proper perspective, and we came from the sole purpose first, then we would say, it is your friend, and then each of those other roles. Because friendship forms the cornerstone for all other relating. If you are not friendly with somebody, why would you engage in any other relating with them? So in the midst of this discussion, and I had some of this discussion with Anis yesterday as well. Hello Anis, welcome to meditation. I asked, because I said, Osho came here and he did a whole discussion about how we must make everybody a stranger. Now you are saying, make everybody a friend. How confusing is that? And he looked at me, and for a moment there, I felt a sort of, just, what are you talking about? Feeling. Like, why am I asking him this? Why am I making this comparison between what he is teaching and what Osho is teaching? But not in an ego way. But an acceptance that you can get information from two teachers and then use that information inside of yourself in a way that works best. So he was just looking at me like, I thought you were cleverer than that. That kind of look. And even as he was looking at me, I went, oh, that moment when you realize you've asked a stupid question and you should have actually stopped to consider the question and feel the answer come up inside of you before you actually voiced it. So I waited and I thought, if I don't say anything, he'll say something. And he said, no, say something. So no, say something. So I said, okay, I get it. I get that the whole discussion about make everybody as strangers, to not to fall into a rut with them, to not be taking them for granted, to recognize that they are changing, evolving beings. And that concept of you are a stranger and I accept you in the now moment and I experience you in the now moment is a way, actually a technique if you will, of maintaining friendship, of opening up the so-called boundaries and barriers of one's mind in order to accept that person as they are, to embrace who they are as they are. And that's a very difficult thing for the human ego to do. Because the human ego forgets that I have chosen my friendships. I have chosen the most profound friendships of my life from a soul perspective, usually long before I was born. And that because we travel in soul communities, in soul societies, very often we will encounter the same souls over and over and over again. So sometimes when people say to others, oh, you know, you're always like that, they have no idea how true it is. How that person has been that personality type for aeons of time, and that inside there's that stronger overreacting feeling because we've had this experience so many times before. You know, you are always the stubborn. You always never listen. And it's always the things we don't like about them that we overreact to. Of course, the good stuff, we take it in stride and we learn to depend on it. So the greater the trust in the relating, there's almost a feeling inside that it goes deeper and you can depend on it more and you can feel safer in it because inside it is so familiar and it's so easy to have that kind of positive overreaction or over-response than with other people. And then Shirdi Sai also says, when you say mere dost mere zindagi, then you must recognize that your friend is somebody who is accompanying you, helping you, not only to experience this life, but to create what you intended for yourself in it. To help you create those things that are going to challenge you as an ego, and to remind you that it is a challenge. So your friends, as people you care about, exactly like your family, must bring you those challenges that you can meet in the safety of their space, rather than having to go to a total stranger. With a total stranger, you won't really care enough to address it. With a total stranger, it might not hurt enough to grab your attention. With a total stranger, you haven't already invested something that you want to keep. And we might not call it an attachment, or we might call it an attachment, but the fact is that when you have invested energy in something, and that choice of do I want to work at this or do I want to walk away, your investment is what creates the choice. With a stranger, you might just walk away anyway and not care. But friendship will always give you that space of questioning yourself, checking yourself. Is this something I want? Is this something I want to work at? Is this something I want to continue investing in, even if it is completely uncomfortable now? And of course, most of us in the room are old enough to have friends that go way back. You know? Like way back. Way back in this lifetime and way back in like so many other lifetimes. And not one of those friends is perfect. Not one of them, as Fatima is so fond of reminding us, they are all works in progress. But that friend is perfect for you. I mean, everybody in the center knows about my friendship with Charmaine and Fatima, right? Charmaine drives me absolutely bonkers. And since she's on a flight and she can't hear this right now, I have to say it again, right? Charmaine drives me absolutely bloody bonkers. We have these huge fights. I'll bang my head against this brick wall with her. But there is never a moment when I don't want her in my life. In fact, there are times where I look forward to the fight. You know, I kind of gear up for it. I get excited about it. And I get exhausted somewhere in the middle of it and want to smack her silly, but I won't stop fighting. I'll still be fighting. I might have changed my mode of fighting now, but I'm still fighting. I'm nicer about the fight now. Stop shaking your head over there. So, just for your information, Charmaine, Fatima is shaking her head like I haven't gotten nicer about the fight. And I know from experience that occasionally, and very often in fact, if I want to break down something in the human ego, like water falling on a rock, Sometimes breaking down something on the human ego is harder than water falling on a rock, and takes even longer. But sometimes I have to create a tension. I have to stretch the rubber band. I have to create tension that creates awareness. Otherwise, nothing is going to shift. It is very easy for us to push things under a rug. And you will notice we have removed all the rugs from this room. No more tripping over things or hiding things. Everything coming to the surface in transparency and good governance. Because those are key to friendship as well. Our friends ultimately are the people we traverse lifetimes with. Our family, we can't choose anymore, right? We chose them before we were born. Our friends, we choose here. Our friends, we consciously choose to keep here. And of course, with friends, you don't get divorced. You don't go through that long process of getting divorced. But everybody who's lost a friend has grieved and mourned in exactly the same way as getting a divorce would do. It's the same trauma, whether you've lost that friend to death, or they stole your boyfriend, or they ran off with your girlfriend, or they stole your money, whatever the reason for the breakdown of the relating, there is a mourning that is equivalent to getting divorced. And some of the luckiest people marry their best friends. They marry somebody where they have a sacred space that then adds that so-called complication called sex. So they marry somebody that they enjoy, that they can grow with, they can learn with, that they can become with, and then they throw in romance and everything else. Most other couples who do the falling in love and the romantic sexual thing then have to learn how to be friends. And that's really hard work when you've already got the complication. And the expectations, and the disappointments, and all of the other understanding of what partnership, relationship is, which takes it out of the realm of friendship. Now, I very often watch Clyde and Maris. And because I practically live with them, I watch them talking to each other, and I think, these two live with each other in a tiny little granny flat. They get in the car with each other all the time. They go to school together all the time. There's very rarely a time when Clyde and Maris are not together, and yet they always have something to say to each other. Yeah? And you can see that they're friends. You can see that they like each other. Thank God. Otherwise, I'd be living in very tense conditions. Don't you think?
He'd have moved in with you.
Yeah, even worse. And he would have brought the cat.
I'll keep him in town.
Okay. He's custody battle already. But I look at them, and even when they're talking to each other in an irritated way, they're still talking to each other. It's not that they don't annoy each other. It's not that they don't have squabbles or anything like that. But they always have something to say to each other. Sometimes when they're talking to me, they talk over each other because they're so eager to share this information with me, and then they take turns to tell the story. And you can see that although they have different perspectives on it, they have a common perspective. They have agreement about something. And I watch this, and I watch how friendship and partnership relationships sort of slide into each other. And sometimes they're so distinctly husband and wife. And at other times, they're so distinctly friends. And sometimes they're like a bit of both. And you have to think, okay, hold on now. Is this turning into a domestic squabble, or is this just a friendly spat? But it's interesting for me to see these things in the world. Because I look at other couples who are married to each other. And that's what they are. They're married to each other. They're not friends with each other. This is not necessarily that go-to person. So we have married couples where the woman has a vast array of female friends outside of the relationship, and those are her go-to people. That's where she goes to maintain her sanity in the marriage. And of course, he has his boyfriends or his mistress or somebody else to help him maintain his sanity in the marriage. And so many men say to me, well, I had an affair because I needed somebody to talk to. And I wonder, what is the big difference between talking and having sex with that person? Do you know? Or very often, they say, well, it started. You know, it started because we were talking and she understood what I was talking about. And that's how that attachment grew. And then because men and women in their ego systems don't know how to be friends, they think they have to have sex with each other at some point in order to call it a relationship. And so they complicate the friendship with it. But essentially, that woman's attraction started with he'd found a friend. He'd found somebody who listened to him, who understood him, was able to give feedback, provide a different perspective, exactly the way we girlfriends do with each other. Because men don't always talk about these things, right? Yeah. They're like, have a beer. How's life? Have a beer. Get on with it. So when men talk to women, and they can't just settle into saying, this is a friendship. This is a sacred space. And of course they can't tell their wives that they have a female friend. It is immediately suspect. Right? Exactly the same thing with gay couples. Very difficult for a gay man to tell his partner, I have a gay friend and we're just friends. Why is this? It's because in the partnership itself, we are not friends. And we don't have that essential trust of friends that says, if it serves you, if it makes you a better person, I support it 100%. I'm happy to make your friend my friend, but mainly it's your friend, you keep your friend. You know, I like to know your friend, but you keep your friend. That's your sacred space. That's where you can go to bitch and moan about me. That's okay. Enjoy. Have fun. The understanding that that friendship serves you in one way, while this relationship is different and serves you in another, that they both serve a purpose, is very threatening for most people. How can you need something in that friendship when I am your all and everything? And yet we created a universe of variety. A variety of souls, variety of experiences, variety of learning, variety of becoming. Just like we have a variety of extrasensory perceptual tools. We have a variety of chakras, 308. Everybody should have at least 308 friends, and not just on Facebook. Because every chakra brings something of yourself, brings some communication into the world. And while all of the chakras associated with the heart center will send out a similar pulse and a similar vibration, the fact is that that heart is capable of feeling so many different feelings. So maybe we should all have friends to answer those different feelings. So I have some friends that I can talk to when I'm frustrated with the world or life in general. And some friends I wouldn't even bother talking to when I'm frustrated because they're not going to get it. You know, we know that. That doesn't mean one is more of a friend than the other. Just that they have different roles, they have different understandings, they have different ways of communicating and perceiving the world. And that this variety opens up my horizons. If you have a friend for every one of the 12 houses of your birth chart, you have a pair of eyes looking outward for you and receiving energy and bringing it inward to you. That's what friends are for. Not just when you need somebody to bitch and moan with. So we have to start asking ourselves. I mean, I'm really great friends with the dogs. Mainly because they know how to keep a secret. And because they're 100% compassionate. But my friend over there, today, didn't know what tears were about. She was completely confused. I had tears rolling down my cheeks, and she was looking at me, and she was looking at me, and then she licked me, and then she was even more confused because it tasted different. So I had to explain, those are tears, I am sad. And then she was confused again, like she didn't know why I would be sad. And amazingly enough, exactly like a human being, well, a compassionate human being, she stopped to check whether she had made me sad. And that, just that moment, was enough to shift me out of sadness and into a knowing that we could be happy together. It was her first concern. And we have friends like that. Now, dogs are incredibly loyal. They give you a really good demonstration of how to be a loyal friend. In fact, if you want to know how to be a friend in any area of your life, just look at the way dogs behave. They always give you a warm welcome. They'll share your food with you regardless of what you're eating. They'll listen. They won't tell your secrets to anybody else. They'll cuddle with you. They'll hug you. They'll take up your bed. They'll do all of these things that are up close and personal and get in your space and get in your head. And they will do it all for you and not for themselves, and completely unself-consciously. And one of the things that gets in the way of people truly being intimate as friends is our self-consciousness. We are self-conscious about hugging our friends. We're self-conscious about holding hands with our friends. We're self-conscious about physical contact with them. Self-conscious about their opinion of us. And all of those things question the status of the friendship. When I see people and I look at their relationships with each other, I see how they're actually just Facebook friends. Facebook friends who see your facade, who see your photographs, who see your statuses, but they don't see you. Now those kinds of friendships are very common in the world. And that means, mere dost, not mere zindagi. Right? This friend is not my life. This friend is my facade, is my ego at play. And when I need a go-to, when I need compassion, when I need to stop and take stock of myself, that's not where I'm going to. Which is why so many people are alone and lonely with it in the world. Our friends teach us how to be friends with ourselves. Why are all of you scratching? Everybody's scratching. Is this topic making you itchy? There are so many lonely people in the world who cannot bear to spend time with themselves. So they're constantly seeking people out. But when you have good friends, and if you have friends like mine, they make aloneness valuable, They make you yearn for alone time. They take you places and they exhaust you, and then you want alone time. But if you have really good friends, and you live fully with them, then alone time, where you are with yourself, and you can smile to yourself about all the crazy things you've done together, and you can rest and gear up for the next crazy adventure. Or alone time, where you can think about what they've said, and you can feel what they've said. Or you can feel for them, about them. Because the thing about friendship is that it follows the law of mutuality. This is about life. And that's the nice thing about friendship. That because it follows the law of mutuality, when there is real friendship and real loyalty, unlike with dogs, who take stuff on, they very rarely give you their stuff. They take stuff on. But on the human plane, it's mutual. You can feel your friend's sadness. You can feel your friend's joy. And you can share it. You can say, I'm so green with envy, but I'm so happy for you. That's real. So friendship takes us to a different level of realizing who we are. In fact, friendship is a very safe space of realizing. I am the first to tell everybody that without Charmaine, I would not have grown half as much. That brick wall has been a very interesting exercise. Without Paddy, I would not have learned anything at all. And these are two totally different soul companions. And between the two of them, without Fatima, I would have killed myself. See? Totally different soul companion. But these soul companions that come and stimulate you and activate you, that's what they do. They animate you. They animate parts of yourself you don't know exist until they are there, pressing your buttons, awakening you to aspects of yourself that you cannot experience anywhere else. So while everybody in the world is very busy looking for partnership relationship, you say to them, make more friends. And they don't believe you. They don't believe that out of all of those friends they are making, somebody will stand out as bigger and bolder and brighter and more beautiful than the rest, as more everything than the rest, even more crazy. And the reason Shirdi Sai Baba says, Mere dost mere zindagi, is for him, God, the Master, is his biggest friend. His friend sent him to be everybody's friend. His friend sent him to teach everybody how to make a friend of God, how to make a friend of all of the animals. Because there is no other relationship that is as commonly available in the world to people across race, culture, and language barriers than friendship. A friendship does not require that you live in the same house. It does not require that you have any legal documents between you, or any assets between you, or children. It doesn't require anything other than two souls willing to love each other, willing to communicate with each other, willing to live each other fully. So when it comes to groups like this, and I'm always talking about the connectedness in the groups and how we hold a space for each other, we like to kid ourselves that we're all friends in the group. And because we're all on a WhatsApp chat together, we must be friends, right? And yet that's not true. Because friends are the people you seek out. Friends are the people you turn to. Friends are the people you make time for. Actually, friends are the people that you expect make time for you, because that's the kind of relating it is. You know? Friends are the people you know have got your back, even if their backs are in danger with you. Now, friends are the people where you say, talk to the hand, and they'll put their face around the hand and keep talking. Isn't that so? Yeah, they don't take you seriously when you're angry. They don't take you seriously when you're mad. In fact, they laugh in your face sometimes. And they're there anyway, to the extent that you can't take them for granted, until something inside of you remembers, this is somebody you have chosen. For those of us who have lifetime long friends, I have friends in my life since I was 12. Those people have a different kind of value, because they have memories of who you used to be, where you came from. They can set you straight if you're remembering it wrong, if you're bluffing yourself in your memories even. They can remind you of where you've come from, and even inform where you're going with that. They have a history with you. They have stories about you, and you better be their friend, because they're going to tell everybody those stories and embarrass you. They're going to show old pictures of you and all those bad hair days you had together. But there is a joy in that, and there is a depth in that. Most importantly, there is belonging in that. And these are the things that the human being, not the human doing, the human being thrives on, and that contribute to fulfillment, to peace of mind. These are the things that leave us feeling more, that leave us feeling whole, even if we don't accomplish everything. These are the things that make this entire journey of self-realization and self-actualization more difficult, but more worthwhile, more interesting, and in the end, beautiful. Nobody asks their enemies to go on a journey with them. Nobody. They might have reservations about taking their friends, but they don't invite their enemies. And so as I'm talking and as I'm describing all these things about friendship, you can understand for yourself that the nature of friendship, and this is the other reason he says, Mere dost mere zindagi, is that friendship, like life, must have that element of tension in it. Your friends cannot be perfect. God cannot be perfect. You cannot be perfect. And that element of tension is what keeps us all from becoming complacently, smugly perfect. Even the self-actualized being is not perfect. Everything incarnated has limitations. The imperfections of our friendships that force us to interact with life from different perspectives and in different ways, those things are priceless. They help us to transcend the limitations of this human existence, the limitations of our minds, the limitations of our ego. They help us to knock on our own doors and open them and have the courage and the strength to step through, knowing that your friend will be on the other side. I prefer to keep all of my friends on this side with me, but there is always that knowing that when you step through all of these doors that open in your life, your friends will be there too. Now, you know I'm talking about the other side of the door, right? Not the other side of life. Just clarifying that, because I do have friends on the other side who are very useful on occasion, but nowhere near as interesting as the friends who are available on this side. And then, of course, the last reason he says, Mere dost, mere zindagi, is because life, when you've lived it, has one value, one qualitative statement that doesn't depend on the number of your friends. But life, if you haven't lived it, if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't grown from it, if it is just this humdrum going through the motions thing, and there are millions of people who live that, who are so busy going through their routine, stuck in the rat race. You know? In fact, they're so busy stuck in the rat race that they don't know they've passed the finish line, they're still running. Those people are not having a life. Those people are surrounded by other rats. They're not surrounded by friends who says, hey, you missed the finish line. Can we go back now? Those people are not surrounded by people who are going to say, stop running. You're running against rats. You're better than that. So the people who are running the rat race or running around on that wheel in a hamster cage, they're not living. They're not accompanied by friends. And a lot of those people in that rat race are so busy with comparison and competition, they're not making friends. They're not helping the other rats run. They're not making sure the other rats have water. So there is no friendship or connectedness developing between them. The difference between that rat race and having friends is that your friends give you life. They add life. They're like Coca-Cola that way. They add life and happiness. Okay. But that's just it. That the qualitative difference between the rat race and life is that you have friendship. That you have friendly people in your life. That you're not just getting out of your car and getting in a lift and sitting at a desk and getting in the lift and getting in the car and going home and dying. Or maybe stopping at gym on the way. And if you say hello to one person, well, that's your friendly experience of the day. There are people who live like that, who work 46 hours in a day. And it feels that long every day. So if you do have friendships in the festive season, particularly this time of year, is a great time to celebrate that, to be grateful for it, to count those blessings. And if you have friendships that you have neglected, for whatever reason, whether you are too busy with work or too busy with partnership or too busy with friends visiting, other friends visiting, the ones that you still need to impress, those ones, where you don't really have friendship, they're also part of the rat race, and now you're showing off what you've accomplished in your life. We all have those friends, right? Let's call those ones acquaintances. So everywhere we must stop and evaluate who are those people that we have cared enough about to invest in, and we want to hold on to. One of the things I was saying to our niece yesterday is, and particularly at this time, my friend Denise, whom you might have met at the center last year when she came here in December, my friend Denise gave Paddy to Sonali as a birthday present because this puppy was born on the same day as Sonali. And after Paddy died, I talked to her, and even before Paddy died, I'd always say to her, you have no idea what a profound gift you've given me. Now, I've known Denise since I was 12, and she was always a bitchy, moany sort, comparative in her life. I was the intelligent one, always. I was the straight A student. They were the glamorous ones. Now, if you went to a girls' school or an all-boys school like me, then you know what I'm talking about. So we had the glamorous friends, and Denise had her own car at 18, and she was a rich girl, and so we could go everywhere. She always had 2 boyfriends on opposite side of the nightclub, and we were the ones who'd be the go-betweens and make sure they didn't find out about each other. So she always had this very interesting, girly life. I was the nerd. I was the intelligent one, highly intellectual. I was the strategizing one about how we could keep those 2 boyfriends on the opposite sides of the nightclub. I was always the one who was always sober. I was boring like that. So as we grew up, from age 12 straight through to age 50, this is the friend whose birthday party I went to when she turned 50, we're still friends. It hasn't been easy being this girl's friend. Because when women grow up with women as friends, there's always that ridiculous society-oriented bitchiness and comparativeness and even meanness of spirit that exists. And it all used to go over my head. I didn't used to notice half the time. People would say, you don't have your makeup on. And I was like, oh, okay. Never registered that it was a criticism. So I just, too much of the time I was busy in my head, thinking other thoughts about the world. So it's been a difficult relationship to manage. And Denise didn't pull her punches. She would say horrible things. Like when I introduced her to Japi, she said something like, well, we should give you a paper bag to wear over your head at dinner so the other people don't lose their appetite. Or something to that effect. And Japi was, are you serving lamb? That's good enough for me. That sort of thing. Very easy going. So when Paddy died, although I'd said to her over the years, you've given me this profound gift. You have no idea how you've changed my life with this gift. And she really didn't. It's taken some time for her to get an inkling of it. But after Paddy died, I said to her, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, you will always have a home with me. You need me, I'm there. You gave me Paddy, and in response to that, I will serve you however I can, whenever I can. You don't have to ask. You just tell me, and I'm yours. If you're coming to Durban, this is home. Wherever I am your home. You don't ever think that you are a burden or an imposition, and there is nothing you can ask of me that will be too much or too big or too demanding. Just as thankfulness for Paddy. Because that was a gift that was out of this world, off the charts, priceless. There is no way I can repay that. And while I know when I receive out of the universe, I have no obligation to repay, I want to share the blessing that you gave me. And I sat her down, I looked her in the eye, I said all of these things. I could feel the energy shifting her and moving her. And lo and behold, this girl who has been one of my best friends from the time I was 12 is completely different in her relating to me now. She is only compassionate. There is no comparison. There is no competition. There is none of that other useless stuff. Now she has no reason to hide her secrets when she talks to me, the psychic friend, Now she is open. There are no boundaries. Now she calls while she's driving just to say hi, There's a connectedness and an intimacy that wasn't there before. Some of it is because she's feeling so much more appreciated. Some of it is because she's feeling blessed. Some of it is because I was willing to be vulnerable and put myself on the line and let her take whatever she required. And then there's just that lovely knowing that she doesn't have to qualify in some way to receive friendship, to receive belonging, to receive anything. That there are no criteria or qualifications that she needs to meet. So now we have a happy harmony where she is Paddy's biological granny and I am Paddy's spiritual granny. But we're both granny. And that kind of sharing has brought us together in a new understanding of each other, that all of these years, 38 years of friendship didn't give us. So now I can say, so did you have that boob job? Without her getting upset. Now I can say these things without the concern, not the fear, but the concern about how will she take it. Will she be overly sensitive about things? So establishing those intimacies means taking a risk. It means putting yourself out there. And I see that in our relationship with God. I've said this before. We are self-conscious even in our relationship with God. I mean, I am constantly looking this way and talking to the masters. When they are talking to me from there, I'm constantly looking this way. And I do that here. I do it everywhere. You know, when I'm looking at spirit, I'm looking at spirit in the direction it's coming from. And people might wonder, what are you looking at? But you can't be self-conscious. And spirit isn't always up there in the sky, but you can't be self-conscious about where you are receiving from in your relating with others. God doesn't care if you've got high heels and lipstick on. God is not a glamorous being. And in truth, your real friends don't care either. They care who you are, inside out. Who you are being and who you are not being, inside out. So my friends come here and they find me in my pajamas. And they say, oh, you're still working. See, they know that. When I'm all dressed up, they go, oh, you're not working today. And then, of course, it was Gibran who said, find your friends, to live. Don't find your friends to kill time. Find your friends to invest time. Everybody thinks they have time. Everybody thinks they'll get to it eventually. But if your friends are the space where you become your own friend, then make the time. You're worth it. And if they're your real friends, they're worth it.